What drove Richard Ramirez to terrorize an entire city? Was he born a monster, or did something twist his mind? In this video, we explore the disturbing psychology of the Night Stalker and unravel the motivations behind his brutal killing spree. What was going on inside Richard Ramirez's mind during his reign of terror? Could anyone have predicted the horror he unleashed? Richard Ramirez became one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. His random, brutal attacks left California reeling in fear. But what drove him to kill? Was it his childhood trauma, his obsession with Satanism, or something deeper? In this video, we dive into the twisted psyche of the Night Stalker to understand what made him tick. The psychology of Richard Ramirez is as disturbing as the crimes he committed. Ramirez's attacks were random, cruel, and often violent. He broke into homes, killed, raped, and left victims traumatized, and the nature of his crimes made it almost impossible for law enforcement to track him down. What made him so unpredictable, so cold? One of the most chilling elements of his psychological makeup was his apparent lack of remorse. Throughout his trial, Ramirez remained defiant, refusing to show any signs of guilt. His self-proclaimed love of Satanism added a bizarre, almost demonic layer to his already horrific actions. But was he truly obsessed with the occult, or was this just a facade? Experts still debate the factors that contributed to his monstrous behavior. His childhood, marked by abuse and violence, certainly played a role. But was it the catalyst for his violent impulses? Or was there something more at work? What makes Richard Ramirez's story so compelling is not just his brutality, but the mystery surrounding his mind. How could someone commit such horrific acts without feeling any remorse? What was it about him that still fascinates people, even years after his death? We'll also take a look at how Ramirez's defiant attitude during his trial only added to his disturbing persona. His constant media presence, paired with his bizarre actions, made him a media sensation, leaving us to wonder if he ever truly understood the impact of his crimes or if he simply reveled in the fear he caused. Richard Ramirez's twisted mind continues to haunt us long after his death. Could his reign of terror have been stopped earlier? Or was his violence inevitable, written into the very fabric of his psyche? What other secrets about the Night Stalker's mind are still waiting to be uncovered? Was Richard Ramirez simply a product of his environment, or was there something darker at play? Richard Ramirez's reign of terror may have ended in the 80s, but his legacy continues to cast a dark shadow on the world of true crime. What impact did the Night Stalker leave behind, and how did his crimes forever alter the way we view serial killers? How did one man's brutal spree change law enforcement, media coverage, and the way we understand crime in America? Richard Ramirez became the face of fear in the mid-80s, and his crimes became infamous for their sheer randomness and brutality. But what's truly terrifying is how his legacy continues to affect the criminal justice system, media, and public perception to this day. In this video, we explore the lasting impact of the Night Stalker and how his name still haunts the world of true crime. Richard Ramirez's killing spree was unique not only in its brutality but also in its cultural significance. His crimes were not just a local tragedy, they became a media spectacle. The relentless media coverage of his actions, the interviews, the court appearances, and the shocking nature of his crimes made Ramirez a household name. But how did this shift the landscape of true crime? In the 80s, the public's fear of serial killers skyrocketed. Ramirez's crimes, coupled with the rise of media sensationalism, helped fuel an obsession with serial killers that continues to this day. The sensational coverage of his trial, his interviews from prison, and the investigation into his actions sparked a national conversation about criminal psychology, making the Night Stalker one of the most talked about serial killers in history. But Ramirez's impact wasn't just limited to media coverage. His crimes and the terror they sparked raised questions about law enforcement's ability to stop killers like him. It was a wake-up call for police departments across the country, leading to changes in investigative techniques and a greater emphasis on profiling and psychology to understand the motivations of serial killers. What makes the Night Stalker's legacy so lasting is not just the horror of his crimes, but the way society has been captivated by them. Why do we continue to look back on his story? What is it about Richard Ramirez that keeps his name in the spotlight even decades after his capture? There are many reasons why the Night Stalker still captivates us. For some, it's the brutality of his crimes, the random, unprovoked attacks. That shook an entire city. For others, it's the chilling details of his personality, his strange mix of defiance and fearlessness, and his twisted fascination with Satanism. He was a figure who both repelled and intrigued the public, becoming a symbol of pure evil. For many, Ramirez's legacy has shaped how we view serial killers. The fascination with his story paved the way for the true crime boom in the media, with documentaries, books, and podcasts dedicated to understanding the psyche of notorious killers. His case was one of the first to truly capture the attention of a mass audience, influencing the way crime is reported and how serial killers are analyzed today. Richard Ramirez's legacy is one of fear, obsession, and fascination, but what does it say about us that we are still drawn to his story all these years later? How has the Night Stalker forever changed the way we view crime, law enforcement, and even the killers themselves? What does the legacy of Richard Ramirez reveal about society's obsession with true crime, and what have we learned from the terror he unleashed? While the name Richard Ramirez strikes fear into anyone who hears it, the true cost of his crimes goes beyond the headlines. Behind each terrifying attack were real people, families, individuals, lives forever altered. Who were the victims of the Night Stalker, and how did their lives change after encountering this ruthless killer? Richard Ramirez's reign of terror across California left a lasting imprint on the city, but it also destroyed the lives of those who came into contact with him. His victims weren't just names in police reports. They were mothers, fathers, children, and friends, each with their own stories. In this video, we'll dive into the harrowing personal stories of the Night Stalker's victims and the lasting effects of his crimes. Richard Ramirez's killing spree was indiscriminate. He attacked men and women, young and old, regardless of race or background. His victims were often at home, asleep in their beds, when the terror began. The brutal nature of his attacks left families shattered and communities in fear. What's even more chilling is the randomness of it all. There was no pattern to Ramirez's choice of victims, which made it all the more difficult for authorities to catch him. One of the most heart-wrenching aspects of the Night Stalker's crimes is the aftermath for the families. Many victims were left physically and emotionally scarred, with some survivors haunted by the trauma for the rest of their lives. Families who lost loved ones had to cope with the overwhelming grief of losing someone in such a violent, senseless way. The impact wasn't just immediate. The ripples of Ramirez's actions reached across generations. We'll take a look at some of the most prominent victims and survivors of Richard Ramirez's attacks. From his first murder to his last known victim, we'll explore how each of these individuals' lives were irreparably damaged by the terror the Night Stalker inflicted. While much of the public's attention has been focused on the killer, there's a growing awareness of the importance of remembering the victims. These weren't just faceless people, they were individuals with families, friends, and lives full of potential. Many of the survivors have shared their stories, becoming voices of strength in the aftermath of unimaginable horror. The public's fascination with the Night Stalker often overshadows the true cost of his actions. The story of Richard Ramirez has been told from many angles, but the perspective of the victims often gets lost in the chaos of the investigation and media frenzy. As we look deeper into the lives of his victims, it's important to remember that they were the true victims in this story, and their experiences deserve to be heard. The true cost of the Night Stalker's crimes goes far beyond Richard Ramirez's own story. His victims' lives were forever changed, and the impact of his terror continues to resonate today. But what happened to these victims in the years that followed his capture? How did they rebuild their lives after such tragedy? What happens when the survivors of such violence face a lifetime of healing? How do you move forward after being touched by pure evil? After months of terror, the Night Stalker was finally caught, but what happened when Richard Ramirez faced justice? His trial became a spectacle, a chilling display of defiance, arrogance, and a man who seemed unrepentant for his horrific crimes. How did Richard Ramirez react when he was finally held accountable for his actions? Was he truly evil, or was there more to his demeanor than meets the eye? Richard Ramirez's capture marked the end of his reign of terror, but it also ushered in a highly publicized trial that captivated the nation. His court appearances became infamous for his eerie demeanor, the strange messages he left behind, and his bizarre obsession with Satanism. In this video, we'll dive deep into Richard Ramirez's trial, examining his behavior, his chilling statements, and how the legal system sought to bring a monster to justice. The trial of Richard Ramirez began in 1988, and it lasted for over 4 years. During this time, the world watched as the man who had terrorized California was finally forced to confront the consequences of his actions. But what made this trial so different from others? Ramirez's behavior in court was unlike any other criminal. He didn't show remorse, and he often appeared defiant, even enjoying the attention he received. One of the most chilling moments of the trial came when Ramirez raised his hand, drawing a pentagram on his palm, and proclaimed himself to be the servant of Satan. His obsession with the occult was not just a part of his crimes. It was a defining feature of his identity, and he made sure to make it known during the trial. Ramirez's courtroom antics added a disturbing layer to an already chilling case. The defense team struggled to prove any kind of mental illness, and Ramirez himself seemed indifferent to the proceedings. The prosecution was tasked with proving that Ramirez was not only a murderer, but a man capable of committing these heinous acts with full knowledge of their severity. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that the public was fascinated by his behavior. The media coverage of his every move fed into his notoriety, making Ramirez an even more infamous figure. But what did his trial reveal about the man behind the crimes? Was he truly a monster, or was he a product of his upbringing, environment, and mental state? Richard Ramirez's trial was more than just a criminal case. It was a spectacle. The media was captivated by his court appearances, and the public was drawn to his strange behavior and arrogant defiance. He became a symbol of evil, an archetype of the unrepentant killer. The courtroom became a stage for Ramirez, and he seemed to relish in the attention. His gestures, his looks, and his actions all added to the myth of the Night Stalker. He played to the cameras and fed into the media frenzy, cementing his place as one of the most notorious criminals in American history. But why were people so fascinated by him? Was it the power he seemed to wield in court? Or was it the chilling realization that someone could be so devoid of empathy and remorse? As the trial unfolded, Ramirez's behavior left many wondering about the true nature of evil and what drove a man to commit such brutal crimes with no apparent sense of guilt. Richard Ramirez's trial was not just a legal process, it was a psychological battlefield. But what does his behavior in court really tell us about him? Was he truly evil, or was there something more at play beneath his defiant demeanor? What motivated him to act the way he did? Was he simply playing the role of the evil killer, or was there more to his twisted persona? After Richard Ramirez's conviction, the world thought his story was over. But what happened in the years after his trial? Did the Night Stalker show any remorse, or did he continue to embrace the darkness that had defined him? What was Richard Ramirez like behind bars? Was there any chance for redemption, or did he remain a symbol of pure evil until the end? After his conviction, Richard Ramirez was sentenced to death, but his story didn't end with his time in prison. The media continued to follow his every move, and his prison life became another chapter in his infamous legacy. While incarcerated, Ramirez remained a figure of fascination, continuing to make headlines through his bizarre actions, letters, and interactions with fans. In this video, we'll explore what happened in Richard Ramirez's final years and what his life in prison revealed about the man who terrorized California. Richard Ramirez was convicted in 1989 for the murders of 13 people, and he spent over 2 decades on death row. Despite the horror he caused, Ramirez continued to be a media sensation even after his conviction. He became notorious for the strange behavior he exhibited while incarcerated, which only added to his mystique. In prison, Ramirez maintained his defiant attitude, rarely showing any signs of remorse for his crimes. He embraced his persona as the Night Stalker and continued to correspond with fans, some of whom were obsessed with him and his story. Ramirez even married a woman who had been a longtime admirer, further complicating the public's perception of him. What's truly chilling is how Ramirez seemed to derive power from the attention. Despite being locked away, he was still able to manipulate public perception, continuing to exist as a figure of fear and fascination. Did he truly believe in his satanic beliefs, or was he simply playing a role to maintain his sense of control? In his final years, Ramirez's health began to deteriorate. He suffered from cancer, and his life ultimately came to an end in 2013. But the questions about his psychology, his motivations, and his behavior in prison remain unanswered, even after his conviction and time in prison, Richard Ramirez remained a deeply compelling figure. The public fascination with him continued through the years, especially as he wrote letters from jail and granted interviews that offered chilling insights into his mind. But what made him so captivating? Part of the fascination stemmed from the fact that Ramirez never fully conformed to the typical image of a serial killer. He was an enigma, a person who was both repellent and oddly magnetic. His strange fan base, the media frenzy, and his refusal to show remorse kept his name in the public eye, even as his health declined. But there's also a darker element to this fascination, the question of why we're so drawn to figures like Ramirez. What is it about human nature that finds interest in these dark personalities? Is it because we want to understand evil, or is there something deeper that compels us to look at monsters and try to comprehend them? Richard Ramirez's life in prison only added to the complexity of his legacy. Was he truly a monster, or was he a man who had been broken by his past and society's failures? Was there any hope for redemption in the Night Stalker, or did he remain a symbol of unrepentant evil until the very end? In the next video, we'll explore the lasting impact of Richard Ramirez's case on American society, law enforcement, and the true crime world. What did the Night Stalker leave behind? And how did his story shape the future of criminal investigations? Stay tuned.